Hello, guys. Okay, so continuing our lecture from yesterday, just want to touch some base on the effect of Arabic music or Arabic music and Egypt. Um, as I mentioned yesterday, we had the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottoman Empire spanned for pretty much most of the Arabic world, and with that they were able to gather or collect a lot of the different maqamat and different rhythms and rhythmic patterns that they used in music. And Egypt was, was under the Ottoman Empire itself, so this had to have a lot of effect and influence on Egypt, or to the culture of listening to music in Egypt. And most Egyptians liked to have or to listen to music, or Turkish music back then, or music from Turkey or the Ottoman Empire, and that had to kind of get to a point, and that was in the towards the end of the 19th century, where Egypt pretty much had no relation whatsoever with the Ottoman Empire, and we had the Muhammad Ali family who actually encouraged a lot of that, but the actual cultural split was towards the end of the 19th century. And of course, with that, we had a revolution in art in Egypt. And we have a lot of composers or mulahinin, or people, or singers, or a lot of artists even, that led the path for new search for an Egyptian identity in music that does not really belong to the Turkish or to the Ottoman culture. With music, to be specific, we have a lot of composers that appeared in the scene, and we have Muhammad Osman, and later on, of course, names that you would know. We have Said Darwish. So a lot of composers that actually tried to write music that represents the people and represents the culture of Egypt, and also to have the Egyptian flavor in music. Add to that also the European influence that took the place of the Ottoman Empire. So we have classical music on the scene, and we have the opening of the first Egyptian opera house by Khedive Ismail, and writing the Aida opera by Verdi, and all that had a lot of influence on the Egyptian identity or culture or music or tasting, if you will. And that had to kind of have an effect also on the composers that led to that revolution. So they took an example of the West somehow, and they used the Western major and minor tonalities, and also, but still added to it the Egyptian flavor, or the Egyptian, or the Nubian, if you will, or the different themes that we've known about. Said Darwish, to be specific, that had written a lot of music that was in the Egyptian dialect even. So that was a new thing, and that lasted up until, I'd say, the 50s or 60s. And then we have, of course, Andre Ryder and Ali Ismail in the 50s and 60s, that wrote a lot of music and added, and wrote for an actual classical orchestra. So you have a classical orchestra playing, or you have an Egyptian, or a classical orchestra added to it Egyptian instruments or Arabic instruments as well. You could clearly see that or hear that in Abdul Halim's music, or Abdul Halim's movies, or songs that was written and he actually performed. And of course, you have a lot of treasures from the end of the 19th century up until, I'd say, 60s, beginning of the 70s even, until we have, of course, the pop music shows up to the scene, and you have a lot of electronic instruments that were added and all that. So that's something that's really important for the Egyptian ear or the Egyptian culture to actually have its own identity, and that also was a really good thing because when we were pioneering in that, and that led to us actually dominating the scene, when it comes to art, especially with music and movies and filmmaking and all that had like sort of like a dominant effect later on everything, and that's why Egypt took that really high up place amongst all these different Arab countries, because we were able to do that early on as well. And that's an important thing for the Egyptian culture, because that's how we actually get to spread out. I mean, when you look at American movies, for instance, everyone speaks English, or most people around the world speak English, and they know about the Egyptian, the sorry, the the American movie scene and movie stars and all that, because of movies everywhere and songs everywhere. So Egypt was kind of like that, early on as well. So that's pretty much the story around this. Um, Now we get to the today's lecture, and today's lecture is about rhythm or rhythmic patterns. You would see with Western classical music, you only had rhythms, and you have the way, of course, of writing everything and all, but you have different instruments, and you have the technique for each and every instrument, and they were added on to the orchestra, and they also in the 18th to 19th century, well, actually, I would say beginning of the late 18th century, early 19th century, you have a lot of percussion instruments added to the scene and all. But then, when it comes to Egypt, we have the tabla, the re, the duf, and other instruments, of course, and those are significance, or like they're very important. They're their signature as well to the Egyptian culture. And there are different countries. With each and every country of those has its own sort of signature instruments that's used in their own local music. So you have the re, and that is the prime instrument for the takht. The takht is a small ensemble with violin, oud, ney, and re with a singer that accompanies the singer, and sometimes they play on their own. And sometimes you add to that a tabla too. And then, of course, the more you want to magnify the number of musicians to play a piece of music, then of course you have other instruments to add, but you don't really have much to do with doubling those percussive instruments. So you don't really double much, but you actually add to them, so you have more different effects. And of course, with that, we're talking unpitched percussion instruments. We're not talking pitched. So it's all unpitched percussion instruments. If there are some of these tunable, like you could actually control that. Don't really control the tonality. More likely, you actually have a high or low. A bassy sound. And a ringing upper sound, or a high sound. So you have either or, and that's how you actually, per se, you kind of say it's tunable. When it comes to Egyptian Arabic music, I'm going to be, I'm going to zoom in on Egypt. Let me try this. We have a dum and we have a tak, and those are the two syllables that you have in the vocabulary of percussionists here in Egypt, and of course with the rest of the Arabic world. So we have that, and that rhythm is called ma'soom. That's one of these rhythmic patterns that we know. So Egypt has this, has Masmoudi Kbir, Masmoudi Sghayr, and of course you could imagine the rest of the different countries in the Arabic world has their own signature rhythmic patterns, and Egyptians are also connected with melody and as well as rhythmic patterns. We even have I bet you anything that you know what this is. It actually implies on something. So with that in mind, you kind of have symbolism in a way, and representation to things that you could actually relate to with rhythmic patterns, and also with the different maqamat. When we'll talk about the maqamat later, but today it's the rhythm. So with Arabic music, you have rhythmic patterns. You don't have free rhythm like in classical music, with the composer writes everything. I mean, even in the current cultural scene in Egypt, when we have a rehearsal and we have an Arabic percussionist playing something in music, you just need to tell them the name of the pattern, and that's all they need to know. That's all there is to it. You just say, we're going to play this piece of music, and normally a percussionist in Arabic music don't really have music written for them. They already know about the different patterns, and you just need to tell them, we're going to play this fox, we're going to play that masmoudi, kibir, sughayr, and you just name the pattern, and they automatically know what that is. And they rehearse a lot, so they get to kind of match that with the melody, and that's how it goes. You have a melody and you have the rhythmic pattern going along with it. Of course, with certain places in the music, they know where to close in and where they're going to end the piece, or where it's the beginning, or where to not play at all. So that's kind of like something that they rehearse all the time, but it's not necessarily written down. So that's pretty much rhythmic pattern in Arabic music, or the concept of rhythm in Arabic music, and how different it is, from Western classical music. And that concludes the lecture for the day. We'll see you guys, hopefully, tomorrow with Zoom. I'm going to send you an invitation, of course, or the ID, and we'll get to see each other. Please let me know if you have any questions, and do not hesitate to email me if you have any questions. Thank you very much.